Now, today we're going to be reviewing a piece of footwear. This piece of footwear to be exact. Now, this is the VivoBarefoot Primus Trail FG. Now, that might sound about as sexy as a German automotive manufacturer, but really it says exactly what it is on the tin. These are some incredibly versatile, all-around trail shoes, specifically for use on firm ground. So rocks, gravel, the sort of stuff that you typically expect to find on the trail. Now, I've personally used these shoes over the course of the past year, pretty much non-stop, both in the gym, training, and also out on the trails, on the mountains, and bashing peaks. And while they might not look it, these trainers have seen a lot of abuse, from barefoot half marathons and all the training associated with it, to multi-day hikes going up and through the Pyrenees. They've even gone as far as some multi-pitch climbing, although it was very, very low grade. So this is going to be a full review of exactly how these shoes have held up, in my opinion, which should hopefully then allow you to make a more informed decision should you decide to get a pair for yourself. Now, for some key stats, because I think that's important for these sorts of reviews, I'm 6'1". I weigh around about 100 kilos, sometimes up to 105, sometimes as low as 95. So there's quite a lot of torture involved in the torture aspect of this testing. Secondly, I am sponsored by VivoBarefoot. I'm very fortunate to get sent these sorts of shoes for free a lot of the time. From an editorial standpoint, I consider myself to be very unbiased. I'm going to give you both the good and the bad of these shoes because they are not perfect. For the uninitiated, what makes these barefoot shoes is that they have a very, very thin rubber sole. They've also got completely zero drop, so they're very, very flat. Now, what that forces you to do compared to a normal shoe like an Adidas or a Nike is, instead of going for the typical heel strike, the emphasis is put on landing on the toe ever so slightly more before the flat foot takes over, and then you press off during the running action. You're going to be punished, and punished badly, if you try running in these as you would in a normal training shoe. Typically that then translates to higher cadence, so the amount of strides that you're taking per minute, and when you get it right, it really forces you to engage with the environment. You feel every stone, every rock, every little dimple in the ground. Which really brings me on to my first gripe with these shoes, the first thing that I don't like, and that is the thickness of the lugs combined with the rubber. I find personally it just detracts a little bit from the experience of barefoot. And it turns out actually there is a really easy fix for this, and I wish it was something that Vivo put on their website because it took me way longer than I care to admit to figure out, and that is this removable insole. Now, taking this out completely transforms the shoe. This isn't a thick piece of rubber, but it's just enough that when you combine it with the lug pattern and with the actual rubber that's used in the insole, it can start detracting away from that engagement that you've got in your environment. Those stones don't feel quite as sharp, the traction doesn't feel quite as connected, and you start losing a little bit of the magic which makes these shoes what they are. Yes, you could argue that I am being a little bit too Puritan, which I definitely am. These insoles are a lifesaver whenever you're out and about on tarmac, walking in the street, going down to the shops. They really help take the vibration out of general day-to-day moving around in barefoot footwear. But when you're using these shoes for purpose, when you're pounding the trails, when you're going up a mountain path, where you're in the gym and you're focusing on every single rep of every single set, this just detracts from the experience a little bit. But what I do love is the fact that they slide in and they slide out so effortlessly. And as long as you don't lose them, there's really no reason why you couldn't just keep them at hand, taking them in and out, depending on the activity you were doing that day. The elephant in the room is that these shoes are £140 as listed on the VivoBarefoot website, which is not an insignificant amount of money. So durability is hugely, hugely, hugely important. If you're spending that much, you want your shoes to last. My initial concern when I got these shoes, when I started getting into barefoot, was that the flexibility that comes with these shoes, the ability to be able to just fold them up any way possible, would mean that the materials are going to be too fragile, that things would start splitting, that, you know, materials would start falling apart. We've all owned a pair of shoes that we've worn for 3 months and then they've had holes in them or whatever. That's what I thought was going to happen with this. Now, I was really happy to see that these shoes have held up fantastically well. Given what I've done with them, be it barefoot marathons, hiking for multi-days across very arduous terrain, loads of training, loads of running on concrete and mixed, like, you know, tarmac. These have even been in and out of salt water when I'm doing some deep water soloing or psycho block as they call it in Europe. And you really, I don't think, would be able to tell. I probably should have washed the shoes for the review, but the material is still almost as good as it was when it came out of the factory. This rubber down the side here, there's barely any wear on it at all, and these have been dragged over rocks, across pebbles. They have not been well looked after. And given that I've even done multi-pitch climbing in these shoes, where you're wedging the heel into stuff to get a nice heel hook and sticking your toe into narrow, sharp, tight spaces, there really is no wear and tear. The only thing that started happening is the stitching here on both sides, on the inside, outside, on both shoes, has started coming a little bit loose. And I suspect that that's due to this repeated action right here, where the toe is sort of folding as you walk. That seems to be the weak point. And I think it would probably be quite good for Vivo in future iterations of this shoe to do something about reinforcing that stitching. Like I said, it hasn't been a problem for me. It's more aesthetic than anything else. This has been like this for about 3 months. It hasn't gone any further than that, but it would be something nice to look at. Another thing that sort of struck me about these shoes in particular, particularly with the lug pattern where you can really see how the sole's breaking down, is the way that the sole has eroded so much faster on that sort of front foot striking position, right? If you look at the bottom of the shoe right now, you can tell right away that up here, that lug is pretty much gone, completely dead. Also on the back here as well, where I've obviously been getting lazy and sort of slamming my heel down into something. VivoBarefoot does work with Michelin, which is the rubber company, you know, the car tires, motorbike tires, and I ride motorbikes as well. And one of the things that they've started doing is dual compound. So having a soft compound rubber on the outside, so if you're slipping or whatever, there's a great amount of grip. And then in places where there's high amount of wear, on a motorbike tire on that center strip, right where you're going down the road, having a higher or harder compound rubber. I would love to see VivoBarefoot integrating that sort of mindset and mythology into these shoes. They have the partnership already. I'm sure it wouldn't be too much of an ask, but it's disappointing, I think, that the entire lug pattern has stayed in place, apart from the obvious place, the front part of the foot, where a slightly different compound of rubber could have been used here to just help extend the life cycle of this shoe. One thing Vivo is really hot on is the fact that they don't want shoes going to landfill. And as an average punter, if I saw that start happening to my shoes, my trail shoes, I'd be throwing these out. The only reason I haven't thrown these out yet is because Vivo offers the Re-Vivo policy. They've got a separate company, you send in these shoes, which is what I'll be doing after this, and they will then take the sole off, they'll slap a new sole on it, and I think that they either send it back to you or they put it up on their website to sell at a discounted price, which is a great way of being able to get into a company like Vivo if you wanted to. But I thought that was quite a nice touch, and it's something that's made me hold on to these shoes for longer than I perhaps would have done in the past. All around though, the material, the fit, the comfort level is excellent. The toe box is something that I found quite confusing when I first started getting into these shoes, which is how much space you should have around your feet in the shoe. At the start, I was very, very overly cautious. I went for a very large toe box. And as I was running, I felt like I was more in flippers. My toes were catching on rocks. It was just generally uncomfortable, a bit clunky. So I tend to size down a little bit more than they expect. I'm a Euro size 45 in Nikes, Adidas, all of those shoes, and I wear the exact same thing here. Now, sometimes that does mean that my foot feels a little bit pinched when I get a newer shoe, but over time, these really do give, and then it becomes a really comfortable fit. That said, there's one thing that I dislike about these shoes when it comes to comfort, and that's this block of rubber right here. Now, I don't know if it's necessary from a design standpoint to have such hard rubber joining the body of the shoe with the sole. And after doing some long runs, you know, over 20, 30 kilometers, it's not uncommon for the repeated impact from the very end of the shoe. This is very flexible and your foot will slide around a little bit. That repeated impact making my nail fall off. That happened notably when I was doing the Barefoot half marathon. I just thought perhaps from a design standpoint it might be necessary, but it does feel a little bit lazy. And Perhaps that's something that they could look to fix if they did end up using a dual compound rubber on the sole. Forfeiting for a slightly harder rubber in the center, which yes, might not quite have the same amount of grip, having a softer rubber around the outside, which would provide that grip if you did start slipping, but also wouldn't be quite so abrasive on the actual foot itself. Another notable thing about the fabric on these shoes is the flex and the stretch that's built into it. For such a flexible and stretchy fabric, it really is very durable. This sock here hasn't lost any of its rigidity and shape. And to be honest, I spend the majority of my time wearing these shoes like slip-ons. I slide my foot in and I don't even bother with the toggle. When I'm running, yes, I will pull my heel down towards the back of the shoe and tighten her up. But for the most part, this provides enough grip, enough elasticity to keep your foot really well planted in the shoe. And I've used these shoes again for many kilometers, many miles, and that hasn't stopped, slowed down, or given. This cord also is a really nice touch from VivoBarefoot. It just kind of shows that the build quality of these shoes is excellent. This is the exact same cord. I've had no issues with it whatsoever, which is awesome. To summarize, all you can really say about these are they are an excellent pair of shoes. Yes, there are some things that I would change. The dual compound of the rubber being a big one, and also the reinforcement of the stitching around the crease points of the shoe. But for a entry-level barefoot shoe that isn't crazy expensive, £140 is expensive, but it's not crazy expensive, you get a lot for your money. They will soak up the miles, they will keep coming back for more and more and more, and they will take whatever you want to throw at them. Be that multi-day hiking in an ultralight format, be that barefoot running on tarmac or on pavement, be it training in the gym. These really are a brilliant shoe to add to your arsenal. I think that there are some things that could be improved, and maybe they will be with future iterations of these shoes. But as a starting point, if there was one pair of Vivo that you wanted to get to try them out, honestly, this would be it. I hope you've really enjoyed this review, guys. I've tried to be as thorough as possible. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. I'll be doing more of these style of videos, so feel free to hit the subscribe button or share this video with your friends. But apart from that, have a fantastic day and look forward to seeing you again very soon.